Welcome back to Mike's Archery's YouTube, and today we want to take a look at a basic crossbow function, and that's how to properly cock your crossbow. Now there's a lot of different variations out there, so we've pulled out several different models for us to look at today, but I get a lot of calls and a lot of emails from folks that have just not been able to cock their crossbow, can't seem to get it back all the way, it's too hard to pull, they put the string in the wrong place to get it back. So we thought it good to just put out a simple, quick video out there on how to properly do this and look at a couple other safety tips while we're at it. So there are a few options for cocking your crossbow. The most standard option that has been out there for years and is the most common, that comes with pretty much every package you're going to buy, is going to be your standard rope cocker. Now that's going to come to you pretty much at any time, and you can pick these up also as an accessory item if you lose it or whatever. But that's going to be the basic that is out there with everything. And this is just a simple T-handled rope cocker. From there, some of your newer platform bows that are very narrow, like this Bear here, is going to have a sled design. And with that sled design, it eliminates those two hooks that were on the string into one solid sled. The functioning's still the same. You're still going to hook that over the string here, but at the same time, it eliminates you having two hooks on it. From there, the other option that you have is installing some type of crank system. Now, when you get to your high-end bows, most of those have some type of integrated crank system, but a lot of bows over the years did not have your ability to crank that bow back. So there's a lot of aftermarket things out there on the market. Excalibur makes some for theirs. They're specifically fitted. PSE, all your major brands, Barnett, some of them have integrated systems and they mount differently here in the stock. Or plug into the back, but most of them are going to be a slide it on, take it off type option. And one of them that we have found that we really like that's from PSE is their universal speed loader. So the universal speed loader from PSE is one that we have found that is just that, universal for most crossbows. It has a little shoe here on the back that's going to fit on the buttstock of most of your crossbows. It's fully adjustable for the length of the buttstock, and then it's fairly wide to accommodate most of them. There are a few out there that you may find that don't fit, so you may want to take some measurements before you go ordering one of these, but it's a real nice aftermarket item that is just that, an aftermarket universal item. It's just going to slide onto the buttstock of your crossbow and then allow you to run those hooks down there, and then you have a fully integrated crank that slides on and slides off to any bow that you've had for quite a few years. So as we take a look at the basic functionality to be able to cock your crossbow, what we want to do here is make some explanations, because this is where we see most of the problems arise. And that is when you put this string on the back. Most crossbows are going to have a groove right here in the back of the stock, right below the scope rail, for you to slide that cocking rope through. What we hear so many times is somebody gets this cocking rope and then they've just grabbed it and they've hooked this over the strings down here and they want to pull straight back with that. Well, when you do that, you've lost all your leverage and your ability to be able to reduce the weight, which is the whole point of having your rope cocker, is to cut that weight in half. So the first thing you want to make sure you do is to split those hooks to both sides of your rope cocker. And then once you do that, you can take that, slide it through that groove in the back of the stock, and then you're going to hook that right over top of your strings on each side evenly. Now from there, once you have that, the other thing you want to make, and we hear this problem so often, is when folks start cranking back on these, they get to about here and they can no longer get enough leverage to get the bow fully cocked. So once you've wrapped that around there and you pull this down, if you bought an aftermarket rope cocker, make sure that these T-handles are very close to the bottom down here, because if not, if they're way back here and you start to crank here, then by the time you get all the way back, that bow is no longer able to be cocked. You've lost all your leverage and you're chest high at that point. You can't cock it. So once you've wrapped it around the back, hook those clips. If you do need to adjust your T-handles, just pull those ropes out of there, cut the knot a little shorter. At that point, just grip those with your foot in the stirrup firmly and then stand up and pull straight back, all in one fluid motion until you hear the safety click. And then once you hear that safety click, you know that you're fully cocked and ready to go. Regardless of which type of rope cocker that you have to pull back with, whether it's a standard rope cocker where you need to loop it around the back, if you've got the sled style, the only difference is going to be you're still going to want to take that, loop it around the back, make sure your T-handles are close at the bottom, but instead of having 2 hooks, you're just going to have some type of sled style depending on the manufacturer. At that point, you can just hook that over top of your strings and again, do a basic pull with your T-handles. Now, if you've gone out and purchased some type of fully crank system, whether it be the universal crank that we talked about or whether it be a factory specific crank that's installed, you're still going to want to, when you install that, once it's on the back of your bow, whatever style it is, you're still going to want to take that string and loop it through that groove in the back and then take your hooks down and place them around the string before you start cranking. And the reason is that's just taking the weight and creating a lever and cutting that weight in half, because otherwise you're pulling directly on the weight of that bow. And so at that point you're able to just crank. And if you've got one of these crank systems, it's going to make it very nice, usually about 5 pounds or less of pressure, and you can cock your crossbow regardless of the poundage. And frankly, some of these high-speed new crossbows that they're coming out with are all the way up to 250, 290 pounds to get those speeds. So it is getting more difficult, and as they get narrower as well, it's very difficult and virtually impossible to do it with your hand. So if you've been hunting with a crossbow for years and you just want to reach down there and cock it with your hand, you're not going to be able to on most of these platforms that are much narrower, or even an Excalibur like this. The weight is just too much for you to be able to get that last few inches and get it cocked. So just make sure you're always looping that around the back and that your T-handles are down here close before you start to cock that crossbow. Now, once you have that crossbow cocked, there's always a couple of safety things you want to keep in mind. Before you cock it, make sure it's always on fire so that when you come back, all your crossbows are going to automatically set you to safe. So when you pull it back and you hear that click and it sets that crossbow, it's going to automatically set that safety. That's that click that you're hearing. Make sure you hear that so that you know that you're at full cock and it's not going to come down on you. Once you're there, 95% of the crossbows now on the market are going to have an anti-dry fire system. They're not going to allow you to pull that trigger without having an arrow in that bow. So always remember that, be aware that if yours doesn't have an anti-dry fire, you can pull the trigger and this bow can go off. And just for safety purposes, keep that in mind. Just like a loaded gun, once a crossbow is cocked, it can be dangerous at that point. And if you have an arrow in it, make sure you're pointed in a safe direction. But once you insert that arrow and you take it off safe, that bow is ready to fire and you can fire that at any time. Now, if the anti-dry fire is engaged, that's going to allow you to keep from blowing your bow up, assuming that you have one on there. And it's a nice safety feature that most of these crossbow companies put on their bows these days. The other thing you want to always be mindful of is this string travel area. Do not get your hands down in the middle in between this string track. It's a dangerous place to be. Most manufacturers these days have some type of finger guard in place on the rail of the crossbow. Always keep, regardless of how you're handling that bow and getting ready to shoot it, always keep your fingers and thumbs below that rail and below those finger guards, because it is a devastating thing if you find yourself with your fingers in the way and pulling the trigger. It will take them off. It is a dangerous weapon. Always keep that in mind. Keep it pointed in a safe direction. Always practice safety, whether it's with your kids or with your family in any way, shape, or form. But we just wanted to run through a couple quick, easy things about a crossbow so that you know how to take care of these things and you're using them properly. As far as maintaining your crossbow, there are a few things that we always hear from guys. Most of these are going to need some type of rail loop. There are some higher end bows that aren't using that anymore, but pretty much 99% of your crossbows, you want to keep this rail lubed at all times. Every 5 to 10 shots, pretty much you want to be re-lubing this rail. And also keep your strings waxed, your cables, things, just so that they last longer. And just like a compound bow, a lot of guys don't like to replace the strings and cables on their crossbow. And I see it every day of the week. Somebody walks in a week before season and it's got the original strings and cables from a 2005 model that's never been changed. We recommend changing your strings and cables every 3 to 5 years, just depending on the amount of use. Now, if you're doing a lot of shooting and a lot of use, or you start seeing any wear whatsoever on those strings and cables, be sure and get yourself a new set of strings and cables put on those bows as quickly as possible, just for safety reasons. Thanks for tuning in to Mike's Archery once again. As always, hit that subscribe button, turn on that bell notification, and leave us some comments in the comment section below. We always love to hear what our customers have to say. Check us out on social media and give us some likes on there as well.